At the beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine, Ukraine closed its borders to men of draft age for mobilization. However, not everyone is ready to fight. Many choose to flee across the border, covering long distances on foot, to remain unnoticed, carrying only the bare essentials, food, water, and the minimum amount of belongings necessary for survival on the road. One such person is Alexander, 25 years old, from the city of Poltava, Ukraine. Life became unbearable. In addition to the ongoing war, which had been going on for more than 3 years, patrols constantly roamed the streets of the city, the so-called TZK, military commissariats, hunting for men of draft age.
Every time I left the house, it turned into a dangerous adventure. I had to invent new routes. For example, instead of going straight across town, I often walked through the forest. I bought an inexpensive motorcycle so that I could get to work by detours, avoiding roads. In case of danger, I could quickly change my route on a motorcycle. My existence was reduced to 2 points: home and work.
And then the worst happened. The equipment at Alexander's workplace broke down, and he was asked to take a break. A week of waiting turned into 2. The call never came. Attempts to find a new job were unsuccessful. Too many conditions, too few options in a city where every intersection could be a trap.
Being at home, I started having nervous breakdowns and a feeling of uncertainty, and there were no answers as to how to live on. There was nothing to do. I couldn't go anywhere. Alcohol or computer games replaced reality for me, but it couldn't go on like that for long. 2 months before my escape, I talked to my mother. She became the only person who knew about my intentions, as I couldn't talk about it out loud. I knew she was the only person who could support me in this. "This is complete bullshit," I said once in a moment of stress. "I have to move on." Now I regret how I conveyed this to her, because I have always been mild-mannered, and it was not like me to speak to my mother in such a tone. But despite my tone, my mother supported me in this.
The next 2 months he spent studying navigation maps, which hadn't been updated since the war began, plotting a risky route across the entire country, because during wartime, not only the border is protected, but also the approach to it, for many kilometers before it.
Ukraine has many borders with different countries. At first, I considered Romania, but then I thought, since I'm taking a risk anyway, why not try the route across the border with Belarus? It turned out to be closer, safer, and less patrolled. When I was gathering my equipment, I studied the experiences of other guys who had already gone down this path, what they took with them, what they advised. These guys also took a big risk by sharing their stories, just like I am now. But there was one problem. You can't go alone. A partner is necessary for a reason. They will help monitor the situation, and if something happens or I get injured, they will help me. And it's easier with food. If someone runs out, we can share what we have left. I cautiously tried to find someone among my friends, but no one even believed it was possible. You see, the government conducts internal propaganda to discourage people from such attempts. But I found a closed group where people were looking for partners. A week and a half before the start, a guy from Kharkiv wrote to me. From our correspondence, it was immediately clear that he was no fool. He knew his way around equipment and knew what he was talking about. The day before we left, we talked on video chat. He showed me his tent, all his gear, and told me what else I needed to buy. I knew right away that he wasn't a setup. He was one of us.
To reach the destination, they need to transport their equipment without being noticed, as using buses or trains would arouse suspicion. Therefore, they need a car. Alexander found a car, but on the last evening, everything went wrong. The driver began telling stories about reinforced checkpoints along their route. The mother of Alexander's partner worked for a logistics company and called her driver who was traveling that route today. He said that everything was calm in that direction, no problems. it became clear. The driver was simply refusing. Tomorrow, they had to get to the point where the most dangerous part began. From there, they could only continue on foot. But the driver they were counting on refused to take them. Then Alexander persuaded his sister to take a risk and drive them to their destination. From the moment his partner arrived in his city, they got into the car and drove to their final destination, which took most of the day. In the car were Alexander and his mother, his partner, and his sister as the driver. At the entrance to the city, a checkpoint awaited them. The police and military were there. His heart began to race. One thought, this is the end. There was no way to get around it, and if they turned around right in front of them, a chase would begin. But luck saved them. The police were distracted by another car, where someone was shouting loudly and arguing about something. They slipped through without stopping. With a trembling, almost silent voice, he whispered to the driver, "Faster, drive faster." The final point where they could no longer drive was a gas station. There, soldiers were drinking coffee and looking at them suspiciously, so they drove a little further to get out of sight. It was time to say goodbye to his parents. His last words,
"Mom, I need you to know that I love you."
but thoughts swirled in his head. Would his plan work? Would he see his mother again? And when would that be? His mother said uncertainly,
"Everything will be okay, son."
but her voice only increased Alexander's anxiety. After saying goodbye to his mother and his partner to his sister, they moved aside, and when they were sure that no one was watching them, they jumped into the forest. From that moment on, they would be alone with nature for the next 9 days. It all began at that moment.
Day 1 began. Emotions were out of control. To say it was scary, better to say nothing. We were still dozens of kilometers from the border, but something unimaginable was going on in my head. I'm sure in my partner's head something similar, but I've been afraid to ask.
He began to feel as if there was a camera trap behind every tree. Border guards were hiding behind every bush. A drone was hovering in every patch of sky, watching them.
Over time, the paranoia fades, but the first few days are a real battle with your own fears.
They immediately went deep into the thicket, avoiding the well-known trails. People walk on them, which means they are dangerous. Was this a mistake? Later, they realized that at the beginning of their journey, dozens of kilometers from the border, they could have been bolder. But how could they have known that in advance?
After several hours of hiking, we make our first stop, a rest in a windbreak. We sit down on a log with bushes behind us, and suddenly we hear voices. Then a door slam and the sound of a car driving away.
His heart literally stops beating.
As it turned out, they were people living nearby who had come to gather firewood and mushrooms. After they left, we breathed a sigh of relief and realized that we had gone unnoticed. The first day of our escape was spent mostly in the car with our relatives, and the trip was short, and it was already getting dark. It was our first time setting up a tent. We didn't even eat and went to bed exhausted. The first night was spent getting used to the sounds around us. The rustling of trees, the occasional crackling of branches, animals howling. We even heard deer, and someone ran by not far away. But even without experience, we knew it was animals. Day 2 began.
The day was physically challenging, as the landscape kept changing. They walked through thick forests, then open fields, where they had to crouch down. Next came hills and old woods full of fallen trees. They had to walk carefully across the logs to avoid slipping and getting hurt.
On the second day, I realized what I was missing. It was a trekking poles for walking. Here's a tip. If it's getting dark, the sun is setting, and you're in a good spot, stop immediately. Don't fall for the trap, "Let's walk 200 meters more." Those 200 meters turned into a kilometer of wandering in complete darkness. We ended up pitching our tent in the dark, without flashlights,
in the worst possible spot. Mosquitoes are a big problem in this area. No spray helps. 8 days of misery. Day 3.
By the third day, they understood much better how to avoid suspicious areas. There was a village on their route, and it became clear they couldn't approach it. The locals might report them to the military, so they constantly had to change their route, right in the middle of the hike. Some trails they took led in completely different directions than originally planned, and the maps showed incorrect information. All that due to the military situation in the country, and for security reasons, the maps hadn't been updated in over 3 years.
Day 4. I woke up and immediately understood. I could only whisper to my partner and couldn't wander far. I packed up the tent, cleaned up after myself, leaving no trash behind. On this day, we ran out of water and had to plan our route through small, natural water sources. These sources were so easy to miss that normally I wouldn't even notice them. Our water filters came in handy. They were compact and worked by killing all bacteria. The water still looked cloudy, but it was safe to drink. We refilled our water supplies and continued on our way. Day 5. Our route passed through the uninhabited Chernobyl exclusion zone. The first obstacle was the Ush River. No big deal, we just swam across it. And since this is a forbidden zone, even in peacetime, there was old barbed wire in our way. We came prepared for this. We had bolt cutters with us, and cut through the barbed wire in 20 seconds. Inside, an abandoned dugout, an old tower. No one is there. As soon as we stepped out of the young forest, we froze instantly. Right in front of us were soldiers. They were setting something up, digging, hammering. We were stunned. We didn't know what to do. We went back into the young forest and hid. This was around 1 p.m. Our plan was simple: wait until they left. These were most likely contract soldiers, and they should leave soon.
But the soldiers did not leave. On the contrary, they began to settle down there to sleep.
I told my partner, we should have left earlier. We wasted 4 hours hiding in the trees. We decided to get out of there. We had to cut through barbed wire again because on our way back we came out in a different spot. In the end, we lost time and got off our route. We realized that we wouldn't get very far today, but after taking cover with whatever we could find, we lay down and thought about how to get around this obstacle. We woke up at midnight, but the moonlight was useless when you're in the forest. The light doesn't penetrate through the trees. After thinking it over, we decided not to risk walking in the middle of the night, because we couldn't see anything, and they have drones with night vision goggles. So, an hour before dusk, you set up camp and go to sleep. So we set up the tent and went to sleep. Problem: the water ran out again. We were suffering from thirst, but for now, we could bear it. We lay in the tent, adjusting our route to make sure there were natural water sources along the way. Day 6. On this day, we walked through a strange little grove. Closer to civilization, sounds started getting louder, like a car, a door slamming. And you think, are they coming for me? You look for a bush to hide behind. You calculate where to run. It's reasonable paranoia and survival instinct. In front of us were fallen trees, but they gave me a strange feeling. They were lying too densely packed, so I decided to go around them. And then I was shocked. Right in front of us, a sign: caution, mines. As you can imagine, they were too lazy to clear the mines, so it was easier to cut down trees and block everything off with fallen timber. We came out onto a grassy area in front of the river. It was the best day of this trip. The spot by the river turned out beautiful, comfortable, almost romantic. A low area behind tall grass. If someone drove by, we just had to crouch down and they wouldn't see us. We sat there for 2 or 3 hours. We collected water, filtered it, drank our fill. We cooked food and ate until we were full. Moments like these are worth their weight in gold. A sense of relaxation finally comes. We're crossing the river, I told my partner. And trust me, the hardest part of our route is just beginning. The river turned out to be the warmest of all. For a moment, I even felt human again. In front of us, a village. We needed to pass between the village and the river, but it was impossible. We could see 2 children playing, 3 elderly people sitting on a bench. There was no way to pass by. This was their territory, and there were no bushes to try and stay hidden. If we went around, it would take a full day, or more. We had no idea what awaited us, so we decided to wait until evening. Let's turn somewhere and find a place to spend the night, I say to my partner. We can still see fine. Let's keep going, my partner said. I listened to him, and as it turned out, that was a mistake. We spent a very long time searching for a place to stop, where we'd be hidden, and where we could set up our tent. So stick to the rule. Don't keep walking once it gets darker. Day 7. In the morning, I told my partner, we're very close now, and it's time to leave behind most of our gear that we've been carrying all this time, and that's why we've been moving slowly. Now, mobility is crucial, not speed, along with heightened alertness, and in case of danger, the ability to run very fast. We threw away more than 80% of everything we had with us. The tent, most of our food. We understood that the distance we needed to cover was roughly the same as before, but mentally it was much harder. Ahead were obstacles. Border guards could already be in our line of sight, and hopefully we weren't in theirs. My partner and I decided to change our route because of the danger ahead that we assessed as too risky and we couldn't get through it. We walked across the river. The water was only knee-deep, and it was very clean and clear. And immediately, we entered the forest. As soon as we entered the forest, I suggested throwing away more stuff. The backpack was still too heavy. And then, we heard footsteps nearby. It wasn't clear, was it an animal or a person? If it was a person, then either a border guard or other fugitives, like us. We couldn't stay put. The footsteps were coming straight toward us. We jumped up and ran, trying to stay quiet, roughly in the right direction. Suddenly, my partner tugs at my arm and says anxiously, "My phone. I lost it." We hid, listening to the footsteps. When the sounds faded and seemed to move far away, my partner decided to go back to where we'd run from. The minutes dragged painfully slow. An hour passed. Then another 20 minutes. Thoughts started creeping into my head. Maybe he got caught? Or maybe, without a phone and navigation, he lost his way. Finally, he appeared, got startled by me, and silently shook his head. He found nothing. I understood his disappointment without words. I only asked, "Did you look everywhere we were?" He answered, "Yes, look," and showed me his hands, all scratched up by bushes, from searching for the phone. We continued on our way. I tried to cheer up my partner. I understood. He didn't just lose a phone. He lost contacts with his family, bank cards, social media, the ability to connect to the internet after crossing the border. All of it. Gone. He told me,
"That's why we're walking together. Anything can happen on a hike. I never thought this would happen to me, but we're alive, we're okay, and we'll make it through."
When he started cheering me up, I realized that he was more or less okay. We reached the railroad tracks and heard distinct clanging sounds, as if a worker was walking and hitting the rails. We crouched down for half an hour, listening. The sounds moved farther away, then closer. We couldn't figure out what was happening, and what the hell was someone doing, walking along the railroad tracks at 9 p.m., in the dark, banging on them. We decided to risk it and move forward, since we had no idea where the clanging was coming from, and as soon as we got closer to the railroad tracks, the sound of metal banging was right in front of us. We looked at each other and realized. The rails heated up during the day were cooling down and making a sound like someone hammering. We smiled, with undisguised grins. He said to me, "Well, you're pretty naive, falling for a physical phenomenon." I looked at him and said, "You know, you're no better at this than I am. We really didn't need that adrenaline rush right now." Day 8.
The weather turned bad. It started to rain. The terrain became difficult to traverse, and the rain only made things more complicated. They were walking through swamps, and by the end of the day it became clear the swamp wasn't ending, and night was approaching. But where could they stop for the night in conditions like these?
A slight panic set in. If nothing had changed in a whole day, there was no point hoping for a miracle after dark. We had to figure something out. And then, a real miracle happened. In the middle of the swamp, we found a dry patch of land, even bigger than we needed for the night. We quickly set up the tent and started preparing for sleep. We'd already taken a dry camp shower, and were about to go to sleep when suddenly a loud sound. A car was driving nearby. Shock. My partner crouched down in fright and said, "We're completely exposed here. They can see us."
Where would we run to? I replied. We barely found this patch of land, and we have no idea what's ahead. As the car was turning around, the headlights swept past us, and my partner, out of fear, rushed to hide behind the tent, slipped, and fell face first, with his hand straight into the swamp.
They only had enough water for drinking and to make instant noodles in the morning. Wasting the last water on washing up would have been foolish. They didn't have any dry wipes either. So he pulled out mosquito spray and used it instead of water. My partner wiped off most of the dirt, and the spray ran out completely. "Double effect," said his partner. "It's clean and protects against mosquitoes." "Well, in that case, let me give you a hug," he replied. They could barely hold back their laughter, almost crying from it. "What a situation," they said to each other, funny and sad at the same time. They completely forgot about the car. No one spotted them, and that night they slept surprisingly well.
Day 9.
We woke up around 5 a.m. and left almost everything behind, without even packing. The tent, sleeping pad, gas canister for cooking. We knew we were 2 kilometers from the border. In the last 2 kilometers before the border, we listened to every rustle, peered at every bush. Our movement was standard, but every 200 to 300 meters, we stopped and listened to everything. The last kilometer, half a kilometer. Every 10 minutes or so, we assessed the situation. Trees wrapped with red and white tape. Maybe mines, maybe something else. A road, potentially for vehicle access. 200 meters left to the border. And then, a mini swamp. We quickly ran across it, and I don't even know if we were just that lucky or if we'd gotten so practiced from the day before, but we barely even got wet. 130 meters to the border. I had been waiting for this moment and imagined it countless times. I pictured border posts, possibly no one there, or maybe even border guards running toward us. But now, I opened the map on my phone, in airplane mode, so as not to give away our position, since border guards might have equipment to track radio frequencies. I looked at the map and saw our location, right at the point where 2 borders meet, Ukraine and Belarus. And I realized we needed to move as fast as possible, right now. My heart was pounding so hard, I realized I needed to calm down a bit. I whispered to my partner, "We're free people." And then I lightly slapped his cheek, surprising him and myself. I didn't even know who was more surprised. I told him, "Release your adrenaline, right now. Let's run while we still have strength." And at that moment, we had almost no strength left. We couldn't relax because, technically, border guards can enter another country's territory for several more meters. But we ran. My thoughts were racing faster than I was, shifting between joy, fear of pursuit, my family. How badly I wanted to shout to them, "I'm free!" We ran more than a kilometer, with 2 short breaks. I looked at my partner, he looked at me, I hugged him, and said, "We did it." But now, let's not do anything stupid, and not waste time, because we had no food left, no water. The phone battery was already running low, and those extra battery packs for charging the phone, with the solar panel, were drained, and there was no sun visible either. I started remembering what people who had already escaped this way had said. We needed to get to open terrain, now, so the Belarusian border guards could spot us. I turned on mobile data for the first time in all these days and saw I was connected to Belarus. I dialed the emergency number.
Hi, how can I help you?
Can I clarify one thing? Are you in Belarus?
Yes, you've reached Belarus. Don't worry, everything will be fine now. I can hear your Ukrainian accent. Are you fleeing from Ukraine?
Yes, there are 2 of us, and we just crossed the border.
The main thing is, don't do anything foolish right now. And listen to my instructions. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. Give me your exact coordinates and wait. Border guards will be there in a few minutes.
Okay. She even said to me in the end, "Welcome to Belarus."
I said thank you and hung up. I turned away from my partner. A tear rolled down my face. Then I grabbed the phone again and dialed my mom's number. The carrier's automated voice said,
If you are in another country, call prices will differ from your rates, but we give you 2 minutes of free calls per month.
and the phone keeps ringing, and I hear my mother's voice,
Where are you, son? Is everything okay?
and I couldn't say a single word. I just said, Mom, I'm free. I'm in Belarus. But the call dropped.
You don't have enough money on your balance to make calls.
I told my partner, border guards will be here any minute. And right at that second, we heard the sound of an engine running at very high RPMs. The Belarusian border guards drove up to us. One got out with a weapon. The others only had other special, non-lethal equipment. From serious faces, one of them suddenly broke into a smile and said,
Don't worry, we're Belarusian border guards. We need to carry out procedures required by law so that we're protected, and you are too. Do you have any sharp or cutting objects?
We both say we have nothing but our phones and documents.
Could you show us the location where you crossed the border?
I said, it's very close from here, and pointed in the direction of our entry. At that, another border guard launched a drone and showed me the screen where I could see the terrain from above, and I saw the crossing point. I told him, right there. He pulled out his phone from his pocket and showed me another video where we could see me and my partner running. And the border guard asked me, Is this you? I said, Yes, that's us. And I noticed another border guard had been standing the whole time, with a body camera pointed at me, recording everything. After that, the border guard said, Do you have any documents with you to confirm your identity? I said they were in my pocket. He stepped back 2 steps and said, One at a time, take them out and hand them over slowly, no sudden movements. My partner and I gave them our passports. They searched us and confiscated everything we had with us, recording everything on video and in a tablet. After that, they said, Welcome to Belarus.
Now we need to take you to the Migration Police Department, where they will officially process your entry into our country. For this, we'll need to handcuff you for safe transportation. Don't worry. After the legalization procedures are complete, you'll be completely free. And we apologize for this inconvenience. We're just following international protocol.
They handcuffed us, and we got into their vehicle and drove to the immigration office. We saw a small village, people walking around, smiling. At one point, one of the border guards asked, Are you hungry? I said yes, very. The border guard said, According to regulations, I can't give you the food I have with me, but I can stop at a store and buy you something to eat. I said, Yes, please, if you can. He said, Don't worry, everything's fine. And he brought us both 2 large burgers with sweet drinks. He removed the handcuffs and said, I'll close the door. You sit inside and eat, just quickly. I asked, How can I pay for the food? He told me, This is my personal gift to you. Someday, feed someone else. And he shut the door. Next came the interrogation. Many hours with a serious man from the KGB, asking sometimes strange, sometimes logical, and sometimes the same questions, but phrased differently. Finally, at the end, his expression changed. He smiled and said, You're all good. You're free. I said, So that's it? I can go? He said, No, you've only passed the security check. Wait for one last step. They need to stamp your entry into the country. And you have to choose whether you want to stay in our country or you're heading further to European countries. But for now, I wish you continued good luck. I walked out, and they brought my partner in. And this man from the KGB, his face changed back to stern, without a single emotion. I was already sitting on a chair waiting for them to call me. They called me and asked the same question. Are you planning to stay in Belarus, or do you plan to transit through? I answered, I'm planning to get to Germany. She said to me, Good, and stamped my passport, saying, Welcome to Belarus. You're free. You can leave through that exit, anytime you want. I asked her, What about my friend? How is he doing? She said, "You can sit down for a few minutes and wait for your friend. He should finish the security check, and then the same procedure is yours."
And what if he doesn't pass the security check?
She said to me, "If he has no reason not to pass, then everything will be fine, just like with you. Only if he's wanted or a deserter and fleeing from persecution, he might face either additional checks or other measures." And at that same moment, she said to me, "Here's your friend."
My partner saw me looking happy and smiled too. He walked up to the woman, handed her his documents. She stamped his passport. And there we were, my partner and I, standing at the exit door. I said to him, "Open the door to the future." We smiled, shook hands. He said, "Are you going to Poland with me too?" I said, "Well, almost."